welcome back to another video on Guardian XOC. As you've seen from that overly cinematic and probably dramatic intro, we're going to be overviewing this motherboard right here, this ASUS M3N78-VM. This is not a high-end motherboard by any means. That said, it does have a decent enough VRM and does support 140 watt TDP CPUs, which will be nice if I can get my hands on some Athlon 64X2 CPUs that have the 125 watt TDP. I have done some hard mods on the board, and that's the purpose of this video today. So with that said, let's switch over to the desk. We'll take a closer look at everything. Okay, so here we are now looking at the motherboard. It's kind of hard to see everything. I'll have to show close-ups, but as you can see, there's wire attached down here. There's also a mess of solder right here, and then there's of course all the stuff I've done here and on the back of the board. So we're just going to go over this one at a time. First off, this right here, this is just a Vcore measuring point, and as you can see on the back, the red does go to the Vcore, and then the black goes to ground. It just ended up being easier to solder it to this capacitor than to try to get to one of the ground plane pads, and I just got taped that there to hold it. Okay, now for the Vcore mod, we have these two white wires right here. This one goes to the end of the resistor, which then goes to the feedback pin. I believe that's actually pin 12 on this voltage controller. And then this pin right here, which just goes to a spot for ground. It's just an empty spot. It works out great. And then I have those wires taped going around the back here, and they go back up around, and I have it zip tied to the RAM slot here. I don't plan on ever using this one. And this potentiometer, it's not the best. I just happen to have it lying around, and it was the right resistance. When you do a volt mod, you want to have a potentiometer that does multiple turns. Somewhere around the area of 10 turns will allow you to really fine voltage adjustment. This one will go to 0 ohms in less than 1 turn. And so that's going to make voltage adjustment a little bit hard. It's kind of hard to get it to go from, say, 1.55 to just 1.6 volts. It will kind of jump up to like 1.63 in my testing. So I just have to be like really careful with that while I'm overclocking, especially if I get close to like 1.7 or 1.8 volts. I'll have to be really careful with that. All right, now turning your attention to this blob of solder right here. It's actually not solder, it's actually a short piece of copper wire that goes between two solder blobs at the end of a resistor, which if I remember correctly, it's a 100k ohm resistor. That goes from the what's called the IMAX pin. That's overcurrent protection, or current maximum, and that goes straight to ground. So I just have that shorted across. That should remove the overcurrent protection. I haven't really done anything to test that. And turning to this part of the board, we have the Vcore VRM. Now this is actually really weird the way this controller works. It has 2 integrated MOSFET drivers, then it sends out 2 different, well, all right, technically it has 3 MOSFET drivers, 2 meant for Vcore, 1 meant for the motherboard or PCH voltage, if I remember correctly from the data sheet, and then it sends out 2 other independent PWM signals. So you can have it set up as a 4-phase. I haven't really bothered looking for where the 2 driver ICs are. And this one here, I believe, is kind of the odd one. This does not register like with the digital multimeter on the back as part of the Vcore VRM until there's a CPU in the socket. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. I'm not familiar with all the voltages that's required to actually run AM2 and AM2 plus CPUs yet. I'm still doing some research into that. But it's just an interesting thing to note. There are 2 low side and 2 high side MOSFETs for each phase. So this does have plenty of amperage. That's why this is rated for 140 watt CPUs. And that will be more than enough. I just need to get some heat sinks onto these, have fan blowing onto that. It'll be fine for all of our benching purposes. Okay, now turning our attention to the lower part of the motherboard, we have here the NVIDIA Enforced chipset. And this gray stuff, as you can probably guess, it's needed artist eraser, and that is for condensation protection because I do plan on taking this below ambient to try to help max out the base clock. Currently on just the stock cooler, I can max out the base clock at 284 megahertz. and taking it even to just 285, the board doesn't post, which does make me think that I probably won't be able to actually max it out anymore if I bring it below ambient, but it is an experiment to try out, and we'll be cooling it with this. Now, this is the stock heatsink that was already on the chipset. What I've done is first off, I've pulled the logo cover off, exposing the fins on the top side, and then I have sealed it off with duct tape, wrapped some shop towel around it for just basic insulation. The plan is that this effectively acts like a dry ice pot on top of the chipset. I just have to pour some finely crushed dry ice down into here. We should be able to get it down pretty cold. I'll probably try to fit a thermal probe underneath just to try to give us an idea of the temperature, though I'm not too concerned about that as long as it's staying cold. Alright, well, that's all for the video today. Watch out for the next one where we have this motherboard. We're going to be working on maxing out that base clock past 285 if we can, use some dry ice as I've said before. And then the video after that where we have this motherboard, we're going to be working on overclocking this F164X2. This is a 4800 plus Brisbane, and hopefully we could break some records, possibly on HW bot. With that said, like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. And yeah, it's Guardian XOC signing out. I will see you then. Good enough.